a groundbreaking piece of evidence about the controversial piece of cloth, called the Shroud of Turin, is rewriting history. Scientists have unearthed a secret hidden in the fabric for centuries. Strangely, it bears the full imprint of a man's body, and it is claimed to be the burial shroud of Jesus Christ. What is this shroud, and how true is it that it is the burial shroud of Jesus Christ? The Shroud of Turin is a fabric coffin situated in a church in northwest Italy. This cloth has been in Turin since 1578, and it has long been believed by ancient tradition to be the real burial garment of Jesus Christ. Many people consider it to be a sacred relic because of the image of a man that was seen in the burial shroud. There has been much debate and controversy, and the dispute over the cloth may never be completely settled, because skeptics reject all supernatural explanations for the image's formation, while some believers are open to accepting explanations that lack the ability to be verified. There are claims that the shroud has been independently radiocarbon dated 3 times using the same contentious sample. Also, there are many who argue that the shroud's exposure to fire may have caused the material's carbon content to rise, resulting in a historical date that is later than Jesus' burial. Is this shroud real? The Shroud of Turin has a faint image of a man who looks to have been through a great deal of torment. However, there is little historical documentation of the shroud. Several of its features contradict the biblical account of events, and carbon dating pinpoints the shroud's medieval period. At the time the shroud was originally shown to the public in Lorraine, France, it was folded, which resulted in a series of burn holes that kept popping up. Patches were then used to stitch the more damaged parts back together. It was handed to the Dukes of Savoy in 1578, who installed it in the Cathedral of Turin. Further restorations were carried out, and eventually, the shroud was given to the Vatican in 1983. However, it is still maintained under the care of the Archbishop of Turin at St. John's Cathedral. While opinions on its authenticity have long differed, things have only become worse recently, and concerns are constantly raised, both on the use of scientific and biblical facts. Is Jesus' likeness present on the shroud? Is it a gorgeous creation? Or is it the burial garment of an unknown person? Or perhaps a result of naturally occurring chemical reactions? These are important questions. Various factions have varying interests in the shroud's veracity, as many Roman Catholics see it as one of the most recognizable objects from the medieval Roman Catholic Church. As a result, they place enormous weight on the shroud's authenticity. Despite this, the Church does not explicitly claim that the image is real. In contrast, doubters and atheists question the shroud's authenticity and attempt to provide evidence to show the shroud's legitimacy, which they ignore. Protestants are less biased towards the shroud because they believe that the Bible is the exclusive source of faith and authority. If the shroud is legitimate, it is simply further evidence that Jesus rose from the dead, and if not, they lose nothing. But then the fact of Jesus' resurrection is being called into question. A group of experts from the Shroud of Turin research project, STURP, studied nearly every thread on the shroud and reported various physical traits that they allege were coded into the fabric of the shroud through a unique procedure. The man's eyes in the shroud appear to be closed, and his hair extends to his shoulders. STURP experts counted 130 blood spots on the man's torso. His arms were folded over his groin. STURP experts also alleged that the victim was scourged with a whip, with a dumbbell-like tip, which was widely used by Roman executioners in the 1st century. Furthermore, the man's wounds suggest that he was carrying a hefty object, possibly the crossbar used in his execution. The man's feet and wrists appear to be pierced and wounded on the side. He wore a crown of spiky items, and blood streams ran down the back of the man's hands. STURP experts believe that they detected evidence of trauma that the man in the shroud experienced. He had a full beard with no hair pulled out. That means there is no evidence that Roman soldiers tore off wads of Jesus' beard when he was being tortured, contradicting what was recorded in the Bible. I gave my back to the smiters, and my cheeks to them that plucked off the hair. I hid not my face from shame and spitting. Isaiah 50:6. Given the biblical scriptures and the way Roman forces were known to treat condemned criminals, I'm curious how the face in the shroud can be so trauma-free. They also said the man in the shroud had exceptionally lengthy fingers and arms. Normally, when a person lies flat on his back, his arms below the wrist do not cover his groin. The wrists only cover the groin when a person's head and legs are lifted. This would be an odd position for someone lying in a tomb. Surprisingly, the width of the right leg above the knee is twice that of the left leg in the frontal picture, but not in the dorsal image. This could be due to shroud image distortion, induced by how it was stretched across the body. The figure in the shroud appears to lack a navel. Perhaps the image is too blurry to be noticeable. However, if STURP scientists can distinguish minuscule coins, shouldn't they be able to recognize photographs of a navel as well? But then, biblical evidence challenges the notion that the image in the shroud was Jesus Christ. The Bible describes Jesus' burial garment, mentioning it 4 times in the Bible. Luke describes the way Jesus' body was wrapped before he was entombed. This man went unto Pilate and begged the body of Jesus, and he took it down and wrapped it in linen, and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never man before was laid. Luke 23:52-53. Luke also describes how Peter found the shroud after Jesus had risen from the dead. Then arose Peter and ran unto the sepulchre, and stooping down he beheld the linen clothes laid by themselves, and departed, wondering in himself at that which was come to pass. Luke 24:12. This is what John says. Then they took the body of Jesus, and wound it in linen clothes with the spices, as the manner of the Jews is to bury it. John 19:40. Then John describes the burial cloth of Jesus in more detail. And he stooping down and looking in, saw the linen clothes lying, yet went he was not in. Then cometh Simon Peter following him, and went into the sepulchre, and seeth the linen clothes lie, and the napkin that was about his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but wrapped together in a place by itself. John 20:5-7. In contrast to the Shroud of Turin, Luke and John report that there were several pieces of cloth. The only alternative possibility is that Jesus was wrapped in strips of fabric smeared with sticky myrrh and aloes. A cloth was placed over his face, and the wrapped body was placed on a separate linen sheet, which the Bible does not specify. The sheet would next have to be folded over the top of the body, beginning with the head. But this would not merely be an argument from silence. The sheet would have become adhered to the spice-wrapped linen strips, and the inner textile layers would have absorbed the blood patterns on the body. The shroud displays a man's face on it, but according to John, Jesus' face cloth was a separate piece of linen, placed inside among the burial cloths. And the napkin that was about his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but wrapped together in a place by itself. John 20:7. In Greek, these clothes were referred to as ta othonia, which means multiple. That means the corpse was wrapped in numerous strips of cloth, with a separate cloth covering the face. Based on the biblical evidence and Jewish custom, the Jews were to bury their dead using several cloths, not just one. But the Jews buried Jesus with a face cloth. Also, Jesus was buried with 75 pounds of extremely sticky spices, whereas the shroud shows no signs of them. Do you think this shroud is authentic? Share with me in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Until next time.